Many Christians dream of stepping foot in the places where Jesus walked and taught, of seeing the land of the Bible come to life before their eyes. For centuries, Christians have taken pilgrimages to the Holy Land, the historic land of Palestine, to see the stories of their faith take shape in stone structures and lush desert valleys. The Christian tradition shares this region as a religious birthplace with Judaism, and with Islam as a place of divine revelation. And yet, Christians have maintained a unique relationship with the land of the Bible and its holy sites since the 4th century CE. Trips to the Holy Land are ubiquitous for maze-filled walks through the vibrant old city of Jerusalem, boat rides on the Sea of Galilee, followed by a meal of St. Peter's fish, reading passages of scripture from hilltops and olive groves, and visiting the holy city of Jesus' birth, from Shepherd's Field to Manger. Yet, between the lines of this Bible-colored view, there are the stark realities of those who live in the land, those whose stories often remain unheard by tour groups and religious pilgrims. Tourism in the Holy Land stops short of telling the whole story of the land, from biblical times to today. And the question begs, what lies in between, or perhaps right under our noses? What happens when Holy Land tours go beyond checkpoints and separation walls and leave no living stone unturned?
This is episode 8, the finale of the Touring the Holy Land series on Across the Divide podcast. This is your co-host Jen here, and I'm excited about this final conversation for a number of different reasons. One, in this conversation, I talk with Saleem Anfous. That name might be familiar to you because Saleem is our very own producer here on Across the Divide. So for this episode, instead of being behind the scenes, which he still also is, he's also front stage. He's with me throughout this conversation as we reflect on the episodes throughout this series, on the wisdom that we've heard from a diversity of speakers for the last couple of months. And then he also shares from his own experience as a tour guide in Palestine. So we kind of reflect on the material together, and he shares some really interesting and refreshing perspectives on what he's seen in tours that he's led with Christians and non-Christians in Palestine, and some of what he sees as the most transformative possibilities that are present for us right now in pilgrimage to Palestine and Israel. So Saleem Anfous is a tour guide in Bethlehem in the West Bank. He's also a project manager for the Muslim Christian Young Adults program at Musalaha, a nonprofit based in the Bethlehem area. And he, as I said, serves as the producer of Across the Divide. There's a couple of special things about this episode. One is that we weave in the stories of everyday Palestinian Christians and their reflections on the impact of tourism on their communities. So at the very beginning of the Touring the Holy Land series, we opened up with stories from the history of Christian pilgrimage in Palestine, stories from listeners who have traveled to the Holy Land. And now we end with stories not from those who are traveling and visiting the land, but from Palestinian Christians themselves and their interactions with tourism in their home. So you'll get to hear clips of those interviews, and then you'll get to hear me and Saleem reflect on what these folks have shared. And there's a really special surprise. News that we've been waiting to share with you all. It's been in the works for months, and it's related to tourism. So you have to stick around to the very end of the episode to hear what this special announcement is. Listen through to the end of the episode for that special announcement, and let us know what you've thought of this series. Have there been things that you've learned from it? Have there been parts of it that have been challenging or illuminating? Share with us in the comments and join the conversation. Without further ado, Here is my conversation with Saleem Anfous. Saleem, welcome to the podcast. It's so fun to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because you are always behind the scenes making everything that we do at the podcast run. But I've been wanting everyone to hear from you specifically for this series, kind of for the whole series long. So I'm glad that you're here and that folks are going to get to hear from your experience and expertise today.
Well, I hope I could put a good impact, especially in this amazing series. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah. Um, okay, cool. So I want to ask you first, Salim, given that you are a tour guide in Palestine, you've been doing this work for quite a while. I'm wondering what it's been like for you to work on this series, given given your occupation, and your experiences. Were there any challenges for you in working on this? Were there kind of new insights that it brought up, or was there anything interesting because of the current climate of tourism right now in Palestine? Like what I don't know, what's it been like for you to work on this series?
Oh, actually, no, I was really, I was happy while I was doing it, especially because I know that previously, with a lot of the guests that we've been having, we've noticed kind of a little bit of a pattern. Like every once in a while, someone from our guests will mention the idea of touring, as if
Yeah.
it plays a major role, especially in the context and to understand things and the realities and stuff. So, like, they're always mentioning it. And so, I was glad when this idea came up to the fact that we should make a whole series about tourism, because apparently tourism is a very powerful tool. When we started doing it, you know, um, I was glad. I was really glad to hear Greenberg and his perspective and
Mm,
archaeology, and then the impact from like Sarah and Jer and others who basically gave an impact, how tourism did really do a big impact on their life. So all of this was something that was amazing. It's
mm,
just that it was good to hear their perspectives. I'm really hoping that the series did encourage people in the West, did support other people who are maybe like in the phase of trying to figure out what to do about the whole idea of tourism. Should we
mm,
come? How to come? All that kind of stuff. Because yeah, tourism is a very powerful tool.
mm. Yeah, yeah, I love even just the language that you've used there of it as a powerful tool. It's something that can be transformative spiritually, religiously, relationally, or even when it comes to like our understanding of what is happening in Palestine and Israel. But a tool can also be um, a tool is something that's used, and so that means it can be weaponized. It means it can be right. It can be used in insidious and harmful ways. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like that's really helpful language for us to think about as we approach, and especially like, a lot of our listeners who are Westerners thinking about how do we maybe understand our relationship to tourism in the Holy Land now or in the future. And I guess I want to hear from you what you think about like the timing of us doing this series now. Like, yeah, it's felt important because so many of our past guests have mentioned it and talked about like the role of Zionist tourism or, just like very offhand mention something. It's like, oh, wait, we should really explore that more. So we've been wanting to do it. And yet we had these conversations as a team, also acknowledging the tension that it's kind of weird to do a series on tourism right now, given that like genocide in Gaza is ongoing. That not a lot of people are traveling to the region. Right, there's all kinds of like violence and real kind of fears that continue to unfold in the region. As we're having this conversation now, the very beginning of June 2025, this is the time. And so there's part of it that felt weird, right? Like this content is so important, and yet it feels like kind of an odd time for it because maybe people won't be thinking about traveling soon. I want to know what you think about that. Like, why is it still important to be having these conversations right now on the podcast? Or do you think that it has the potential to still have an impact, even if people aren't thinking about traveling right now?
Of course, of course. I mean, when many times when I have discussions with friends of mine, uh, yeah, sometimes, speaking about tourism, and I heard it and other people mentioning it in the podcast, tourism, sometimes the word tourism sounds more of a fun activity family or people do.
Yeah.
Uh, and so maybe tourism as it is not like the best word that could be used, neither pilgrimage itself, because sometimes pilgrimage to the Holy Land just, puts people in the box of, I want to, strengthen my spiritual individual growth and that's it and go back home. But I mean, in the sense of people understanding the concept of tourism, we're going to be using that term. And why I said it's a powerful tool, because first, we've heard it from many people. We had guests how, you know, for example, Israel has been using tourism with its agenda, and basically, even in the West, Christian Zionists have been using tourism as a way to promote a certain narrative. So it is a tool. Um, Now, why now is it important? The war itself and the genocide and what's still going on after a year and a half, almost 2 years now. So we can see the world that basically has been hearing a lot about Palestine. Palestine, the conflict, the occupation, Israel, Palestine in the world news, like it's become a big deal. We a lot of people in the world have been hearing about it, about everything that's been going here. What we have noticed that a lot of people have been supporting Palestine. And what we noticed as well is a lot of people have been supporting Palestine, but they have never been here to Palestine. They've heard it, they've heard the cause, they have empathy to the cause, they're aware. There's a lot of really great movements around the world to really educate people of what's going on. The fact that it is a just cause, people are realizing what's the situation and they're more aware of what's going on. And so basically, worldwide, everyone now hears supports, marches, universities, they protest. Everyone is their eyes are on Palestine. And because so, I think it's a crucial time now to talk about the tourism and this kind of stuff, because what we as a tour guide, what I see, there's a huge potential that after the war, there are a lot of people around the world. They want to come here as a way of support, as a way of we learned about Palestine, we protested for Palestine, but we want to see Palestine. We want to see the Palestinian people.
Mm.
We want to see this land that we've heard a lot on the news. We want to see what's going on here. And so there's a huge potential of people coming to the land, whether a fact of support, whether it's because they want to expand their knowledge. And so to really offer the cities of tourism,
Mm.
I think it's a very important thing that we did, because now it could hopefully shine a light to a lot of people to know what to do the best way possible to gain as much from their coming here.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I think we certainly have been hearing from so many friends, right? Friends who care a lot about Palestine and are in solidarity with the Palestinian people, and yet would do anything to make it there, right? To get to meet Palestinians in their, in their home and learn from them under the context of military occupation. And so it's encouraging to hear you say like the opportunities of what can come from people from the outside coming and visiting Palestine and like spending time meeting people and learning from them and building relationships, that like there's those opportunities are still there, and perhaps even more so in a time where the economic situation in Palestine, right, in the West Bank is really dire, right? Because I mean, Michelle talked about this in the conversation that I had with him earlier on in the series, that like so much of of, the economic, kind of life force of a lot of Palestinian cities, but Bethlehem in particular, survive based off of tourism, like really, really need it um, in order for folks to have jobs, right? And in order for there to be, uh, a sort of like it's a huge source of income for Bethlehem. So I'm thinking too about maybe even some ways that there's even more opportunities now for folks who are curious and interested in traveling, since since the genocide in Gaza, that maybe there's even more opportunity now.
If you think the work we're doing here at Across the Divide is important and the conversations we're having are necessary, then I invite you to consider becoming a patron of the podcast, a monthly supporter of Across the Divide on patreon.com/Across the Divide. You can support us for as little as $5 a month and get access to various kinds of premium content like extended episode conversations, merch options, and the ability to have conversations with us and other Patreon supporters. You could also join us in frequent private meetings where we discuss previous episodes and plan for future conversations together on the podcast. So join the small and beautiful community of Across the Divide by signing up on patreon.com/Across the Divide.
I wonder, so you said, like, based on some of the things that you see as a tour guide, you see these opportunities, and we've heard from a lot of different people throughout the series of like different, right, their own view on things of where they see, the kind of biggest opportunities. Michelle talked about like the role of Western Christian leaders in actually shifting what like mainstream pilgrimage to the Holy Land looks like. And so he talked about the work that Palestinian tour guides and religious leaders had done to really like influence Western Christian leaders to shift how it is that they travel to and spend time in Palestine. Sarah and Jer talked a lot about like immersive experiences and the role of like relationship building, in kind of transforming people. I wonder what you see as some of those biggest opportunities from your experience. Like, where do you see the most kind of transformation happen when you're guiding folks around in a place that you know very well and they don't know it at all? Where do you see some of those biggest opportunities for transformation?
The biggest opportunities I actually see, I mean, a lot of people come to this land. Like with the tour experience that I had, I have met people from different places around the world who are, people who come, they're not religious, they come here because they just want to see what's going on, or they just like the history, even if
Mm,
religious history, like the Holy Land. And then you have people who are, they're really focused on coming as pilgrimage and they just want to come and pray. But then you have groups who want to really want to discover things and understand things. And I think the biggest opportunity that I have seen for me to have it is when I have groups, Christian groups, who are coming here for a just cause.
mm,
And so the opportunity for me not to just talk about and show them around, taking them to Hebron or Bethlehem or to Nablus or to Jericho or other places where you introduce the the culture and the history of the Muslims and the history of Christians and the history and the culture of ours,
yeah.
or to take them to a specific church and just to talk about the history of the church, but also to talk with them about theological points that matter and show it on the ground, the reality. I
Mm,
think this is something that it's the biggest opportunity that I love to get. Like when I have a
mm.
group of Christians who really want to see the conflict, see what's going on, see the occupation, but at the same time understand where does their Christian faith fit into all of this. So it's not just about touring, but you get the chance to start talking about theological points that basically I've noticed a lot in the West. People, because things like, for example, the concept or the understanding of loving an enemy.
Mm,
People like, yeah, we learn it in the church with the but we learn about it, we experience it in a different way. But like when they come here and to see the reality of how to love an enemy, but and then to try to show them how we're trying to do it,
Hmm.
that these kind of opportunities are the biggest opportunities that I like to have.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that it ties into like different pieces that have, been like threads throughout the series. Um, but I think that like you putting it so simply, like, why does this matter to me as a Christian? Or how does this impact like how I live as a Christian, how I live out my faith? And it reminds me of something that Michel said in his in the conversation I had with him, where he said like tourism really isn't the best word to talk about like this different thing that we're talking about, this transformative kind of experience. Like tourism is where you are maybe going on vacation or you're going because you're interested in a place, right? And you're going to have your own experience, to learn some history, to be someone who travels around and consumes. But he offered pilgrimage as a different language, which I think it like relates to, kind of the opportunities that you've seen be really transformative, where folks are open to, or even like are coming at this from a perspective of like, I actually need to figure this out or be here in some way because I'm a Christian, right? Like because of the commitments that I have to justice, to love friends and neighbors, to be a sort of peacemaker or peace builder. This is essential for me to be and be transformed by learning from Palestinians and seeing the ways that they're challenged in these ways daily, dehumanized, restricted from having basic human rights and freedom of movement. And so I think that to me is really in conversation with what are we going to call this to begin with? Like if we're going to call it tourism, is that maybe the way that Christians have visited the Holy Land for a long time, and some of what we're critiquing, some of what different guests have critiqued throughout the series of like this model of extraction or consumption, where like I'm going to have my experience to see these places, right? To be in a place where Jesus walked or taught or healed, to see a site where the patriarchs were buried. But yeah, then what am I giving, right? Is it just for me at the end of the day? Or is there something beyond that? And I feel like thinking about how this kind of experience changes one's own faith, or how we might live out our faith commitments in the world, is a way to like counteract that, and in a way to kind of dismantle some of the ways that Westerners, but certainly other global Christians, have traveled to the region for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and you think about it. I mean, even if people are coming here and thinking like the matter of them, like they want to benefit from it. As Christians, like the when they come here, the reality they see on the ground, the fact of the context of it all, biblically, and also the reality of what's going on, and then putting it together,
Mm.
it really creates a big impact on their life that we hope this impact could replicate to other people around them. And
Mm.
so basically, because honestly, if you think about it, the only thing that could support us, the only thing could really matter for us, the only thing could really do a good, helpful impact around the world to our cause as people who need justice, where as people who are under occupation, is the voice of other people.
Mm.
And so that's why the fact when they come here and they see it, and specifically as Christians, going back to the Western world, to their churches, and basically spreading out the reality of the context, even the biblical context, right? You're coming to the Holy Land. So when they tour around and just, discover, oh, it's only 10 minutes away from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, and, put that pieces of puzzles in the biblical stories, but also to see that greater context of, Jesus was living under occupation. Jesus was living under corruption that he suffered from and had to, talk about it. And so basically understanding it within the context of the same land, the same place, I've seen it many times. It creates a big impact on a lot of people. You know what? Even I've had so many tours with people that are non-Christians, and they would come to me and they're atheists or whatever they say. They don't believe in God and other. But I introduced to them to the fact that you have to understand that within the context and the reality of where we live here, religion plays a role. So I understand where you come from, but do understand that because of the context, I have to speak within the context of religion, even within the conflict issue and the occupation, is because religion plays a major role. The fact we are in the Holy Land, they're using, Christian Zionists are using in their narrative the whole, Jewish-Muslim war, or the whole Israel existent war and Israel, biblical Israel, all that kind of stuff. So religion plays a role, even for people who come here who are not religion. So that's why, like, I have to explain to them that because it's important, and hoping for them to understand that, okay, now we understand even the context of the whole idea of religion and what it is and what it's not, and the Islamophobia, or anti-Semitic and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the whole point about it.
Do you find yourself doing a lot of work just helping clarify for people that are visiting what, like, genuine expressions of religion in the land are, and what, like, inauthentic ones are? What I mean by that is, like, okay, here's what Christianity actually looks like for Palestinians, or here's what the Jewish faith looks like for a lot of people practicing in the land, or Muslim faith, and here's when it's actually just being used for politics, right? Like through kind of great political Zionism that has this, is just using religious language basically to justify kind of political arguments. Like, do you find that you're having to do a lot of that? Because I know, like, a lot of Christian folks in the U.S. that I talk to, particularly in church contexts, have a lot of things that they've learned about, let's say, about Islamophobia, like relating to Islam and violence, and thinking that, like, particular ideas or like endorsements of violence are inherently somehow tied to this religion. And so, right, you have to do this work of, like, okay, no, actually, these are two different things, right? There are situations where they've been, sort of where like Islamic teachings have been mobilized to support particular violent actions, but the majority of people would would say the absolute opposite, and do practice, condemn rather than condone violence in any form. So I don't know, do you feel like you're doing a lot of that work too with folks that are traveling, of like untangling what religious practice looks like, and when it's being used politically?
Have to talk about I feel like it's really important to always talk about basically the reality that as Palestinian Christians, as Christianity, we exist here. I mean, today we're actually, at the moment we're doing this podcast, we're celebrating Pentecostal Day. It's the mother church. We are the mother church. So, like, I have to introduce that and talk about this. So to talk about the history of the Christian church, the church here, because in the West, people sometimes, for a lot of time, because of Christian Zionism, they think completely the church doesn't exist or haven't been existent in this land.
Yeah.
So to talk about this, talk about the context of the Bible. The Bible itself. Sometimes I feel like I understand there is no wrong in the fact that the context of, like, people in their interpretations and their theological understanding, and that's the beauty of our faith in Christ, but it makes more beautiful sense to put the context of the reality of the Bible on the ground to people. So that's another thing that I also talk about. And then the reality that we're suffering from, which is the occupation. And as a Christian, how do I live through that? So I'm giving them also that. So basically, those are things that I feel like a lot. And also the relationship for example, talking about the fact that, I speak Arabic. And so when I speak Arabic, I worship in Arabic. And when I worship God in Arabic, the language I say is Allah. So Allah is not, tied to a specific religion, and it's scary and whatever, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to. And also, like, the conflict, the occupation, we've been under occupation for what, 77 years. It's the longest occupation in the modern history. So the context of it is already a lot as well. So
Mm.
that also itself, there's a lot. The
Mm.
complexity of it, the challenges, the what we speak against basically another narrative, which is the Christian Zionist narrative or the Zionist narrative in general, that has been for a very long time speaking to the whole world and spreading their narrative to
Mm.
now speak. It's a big fight. So, you have to explain a lot. You have to introduce a lot. You have to really, show things a lot. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that we have to talk. There's a lot of things that we want to share in a very short time when people come here. So, it's a lot.
Yeah, I respect you so much for that, because you get such a short amount of time with people, and you're trying to, right, like, introduce them to 77 years of history of occupation, right? The longer history beyond that, right? History of Palestine, right? The creation of the state of Israel. And then, like, this even longer history of indigenous Palestinian Christianity, right? Which, right, then it's thousands of years back. So yeah, you have to be pretty well versed in all of these histories to do this work, quickly, sensitively, and in a short amount of time,
Mhm.
with the folks that you're guiding. And just what you said really struck me, of the opportunity that we have as folks from the West, as Christians from all over, of getting to be witnesses to the experiences of Palestinians in this really unprecedented context. I mean, you just kind of saying this is the longest, military occupation in modern history. We, there's no way that we can know what that is like. I mean, I know, many of the folks that we had on in the series talked about, who were not Palestinian, who are not Israeli, who are Americans. They talked about their experiences of, like, having their ignorance shattered, right? Of going to Palestine and realizing, like, oh, this is what a checkpoint is like. This is what it's like to be interrogated by an Israeli military officer at the airport, right? This is like a really basic part of Palestinian daily experience that's horrific, that I didn't know about. So, like, we heard about a lot of those experiences, and I think, like, there's some things, there's a lot that we can seek out and learn as folks who don't live in that context, but also there's a unique opportunity there to learn these things from Palestinians that, like, we can't learn from anyone else, right? This the and yeah, it's an unprecedented occupation, in the sense that, like, there's not a textbook for, like, what this looks like in our history. And then also the ways that Israel has executed this occupation through a system of eventually what has become apartheid is something that is even, right, like, very unique and different from the context of apartheid in South Africa. And so, yeah, we can listen to other folks talk about this in our own context, maybe who have spent time there, or listen to the theologies and beliefs of Christian Zionists, but all of this is mediated through their own commitments and beliefs, political and theological, their own experiences. And so still there's a barrier there. And so I think whether it happens through traveling and spending time in Palestine itself, or seeking out learning directly from Palestinians in other ways, like, this is one of the, I think, tasks that we have as Christians, to think about, like, okay, how do I be a Christian in a time of genocide? How do I live out my faith in a context of extreme, visible violence and injustice? And if we're Americans, if we're from other European countries, like, we're implicated in that some way, because our tax dollars, our governments are making this genocide possible. We are supporting it, right? Financially, materially. religiously. And so like to think about the question of like how do I be a Christian? How do I live out my faith in this time? I truly think like we can't know this alone. We need to learn from our Palestinian siblings. And so that was a whole big tangent, but what you said just I feel like really brought that to light, that like there's no way that we can learn all that we need to learn without being in conversation with and learning from the experiences of Palestinians. Because at the end of the day, this is your experience. This is what you're living. And I feel like just as friends, as podcast team members, every time I talk to you, I learn something new. Honestly, like I don't tell you this all the time, but I'm always learning from you because my knowledge and my experience is limited. And so I think that's something unique that can be facilitated by tourism, with this focus on, faith and justice, and then can happen through relationship, that's also not through travel when we don't have the opportunity to travel.
And let me say, I mean, after saying all this, to clarify that it's not because of what we're going through that now we're experts and basically we got it all, and the Bible is, we're the best in practicing our faith as Christians. No, we're actually not at all. I mean, the reality is there's so much challenges that the fact when brothers and sisters from around the world as Christians, when they come here and see that, what we want them to see as for me as a tour guide, what I want them to see is to see the reality and to see our struggles, not as human beings only, but also as Christians, as our faith, because we still struggle. I mean, we're struggling a lot to keep our faith, to practice our faith, to keep hope, right? Hope is one of the essentials in our faith. Hope is like the furthest away from who we are as Christians now in the midst of this genocide. What's the reality of how to really fight for justice in the context of understanding every single day to how, justice is one thing, but it's you cannot just put justice as a whole and forget God's love. Then it's dangerous. And so the fact is doing that, we as tour guides, as people who want to always from within the whole series that many people have encouraged other people to come, is the fact that we want to show you the reality, but also we want to show you how much we are trying to put our faith in the best way possible, in the midst of all of this genocide and occupation, and many times we'll fail. I mean, it's not easy. It's challenging.
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that. Right, we're not saying that like Palestinians have it figured out and are actually like the best Christians, right? No, like and I think like the idea of not necessarily failure, but imperfection is a helpful one to think about, right? I think like we would all think about our own like maybe just personal faith journeys as really imperfect, right? Of trying to embody these really hard things to live out, like hope and love, and forgiveness, right? But I also think about like the importance of community in being able to get closer to these ideals. And so I think about like the role that having others alongside you in the journey, just like witnessing or speaking words of support or care into that experience, how important that can be. So like Palestinians saying like, look, here's how we're trying, like as you're saying, like here's how we're trying to live out some of these ways of being Christian in these really immensely difficult contexts, and here are the ways that it's really hard. And so I think about like, okay, outsiders, Western Christians could think about like, there is a huge opportunity, even just one of like spiritual and communal support and encouragement, right? I mean, like, I think about like the early church, that, all of the writings and letters that are in the New Testament of early church leaders writing letters back and forth to one another in some senses an encouragement, right? Of encouraging them through times of immense hardship to live out, this very new sort of faith that they're trying to figure out and maintain. So I see another opportunity there in what you just shared.
This episode is supported by Peace Catalyst International. Across the Divide has joined forces with Peace Catalyst International to amplify the pursuit of peace and to explore the vital intersection of Christian faith and social justice in Palestine, Israel. Both Peace Catalyst and Across the Divide are committed to equipping Christians worldwide to move beyond apathy and into active solidarity, working together for a holistic and just peace for everyone in the land. By supporting this partnership, you can help elevate Palestinian voices and initiatives working for peace all over the world. Visit Peace Catalyst International's website to learn more about their work and consider giving to them directly or supporting us through our page on the Peace Catalyst website. The link is available in the show notes below. Together, we can equip Christians to begin following Jesus in his sacred and healing work for a just peace.
So we have something kind of special and unique now that maybe we can move to share with listeners. So we've been scheming about this for a little while and trying to figure out like what the best way to do this would be. But we really felt like we wanted to bring in more voices from Palestinian Christians into this series, so that as we like think about all of the like material that we've journeyed throughout the series, thinking about ending by centering again the voices and experiences of Palestinian Christians and their relationship to Christian tourage or pilgrimage in Palestine. So this developed in conversation, but I don't know if you remember, it was actually your idea to start, Saleem, right? Like you were traveling around, tourism's picking back up again in the spring, and you were like, I think we should do some interviews with people, and get them on the podcast and kind of bring their voices to the forefront. So do you want to say a little bit more, Saleem, about the folks that you did interview and how you went about interviewing them?
We got 3 people that I interviewed to ask them what's the impact of tourism, what's tourism for them, how important is tourism as a way also to shine to people, for our listeners or whoever is listening, to understand how much really tourism has a big impact. So that's the kind of idea, like, hey, let's listen to the people in the streets, just the normal people.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful. It's so grounding to just like remember, okay, wait, here is the really huge impact that tourism has on, like you're saying, like regular folks, Palestinians who might not even be involved in or related to tourism, but just seeing how it impacts them. Because I think it's easy to get caught up in like the power and privilege that Westerners have, especially Western Christians, think like, oh, we can travel to these places. So like, let's think about how we want to organize our schedule and this and that. And so like, again, centering that like there's an impact here, right? Like it's not just about me or my group's experience. There's some kind of an exchange and that has an impact. So I'm excited to share these, and we'll share a couple of clips from these conversations, and then Saleem, you're going to offer a little bit of a summary, and then we'll kind of discuss them a little bit. So first we will hear from Bassema.
هلا احنا كجمعية سيدات بربارة صار في عنا مقترحات طبعا بناء على دراسة الوضع في المنطقة. بما انه في عنا مقومات للسياحة، زي عنا الاماكن الدينية، في عنا اماكن اثرية تاريخية، في عنا كنائس قديمة، في عنا كنائس مدمرة. فكرنا إنه لازم نعمل جيست هاوس نستضيف الجروبات السياحية الوافدة إلنا. ما بدي أنا بس السائح يجي يشوف الكنيسة يشوف الجبل ويطلع. حلو كمان إذا بيجي بيكون مقيم عنا في البلدة، يختلط مع السكان، يتعرف على عاداتنا على تقاليدنا، حتى إنه يتمكن كمان من نشرها للعالم الخارجي، حتى يشوفوا إنه إحنا شعب مثقف واعي، في عنا حضارة، في عنا إرث تاريخي، في عنا إنسانية، بنحب الجميع وبنحب بنستقبل الجميع ويكونوا موجودين عنا.
So Basima talks about basically because she is one of the people, one of the women, the first two, but like Basima, she's one of the people, the women in Aboud who run Santa Barbara Women Ministry, which they really care a lot about preserving our culture, our heritage through like within the dancing and food and other stuff as women. And one of the things they recently did is they opened a small guest house in Aboud. And she talks about basically because Aboud is, it's a small town, it's a beautiful town. There's a lot of churches there. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of culture that we're trying to preserve. That we thought by opening a guest house to encourage tourists to come here, basically it will also give them something about who we are as an identity as Christians, as what we've been trying to do the whole time we've been here. So that's their summary of what she says.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I want you to, if you're open to it, share more about Aboud and the uniqueness of this Palestinian Christian village, but maybe let's save that for the extended episode. But so for her, like, what does she say the impact of Christian tourism is? Like, I mean, clearly all of her sort of work revolves around, kind of like celebration and preservation of Palestinian culture and history. So how does tourism impact the work that she does?
It in two ways. First, I think the fact because they wanted to open a guest house, it's a way of income that supports the women and what they're doing. And because they're a group of women who are basically retired from their jobs, and they got together to really work on preserving so much of our history and culture as Palestinians and as Christians. So they thought by opening a small guest house, economically that will support them and help them. But then the second thing she thought of, or basically as a women there, as the ministry they're doing, they thought of the fact that we're preserving it, but we want to share it as well. We don't want to hide it. So it will be as much beautiful as this to share this culture and heritage to our next generation. It is also as impactful that we share this as a knowledge to Westerns who want to come and actually learn a lot of our history and culture.
That's so beautiful, and it's not what I was expecting. There's like this really generous, selfless posture that, like, yes, it's important to preserve our own history and culture, but not for us alone, right? To widen that and to invite others into it and to share it with them, and then think about the possibilities that are present when other folks, when Western Christians can be stewards maybe of what they learn of that culture and history, and think about like the potential impact of that. Like if let's just like dream here, if every American Christian knew like two things about Palestinian history or Palestinian Christian history, think about like the impact of that, right? Of like what the American church's relationship to the church in Palestine would be, of our understanding of history and like contemporary realities of how different that would be. Like the ripple effects of that would be huge.
Yeah, for sure, of course.
Yeah, and something else that I'm noticing here, which this might not be something that listeners would think of immediately, but this is pretty unique for an all like woman run sort of center and operation. like this in Palestine. Do you want to just say anything about like the importance of that, like supporting this kind of work that's run and sustained all by women?
Women have a major impact. Let's not forget that culturally we are a community-based, family-based culture,
Mm,
and women plays a major role in our community and family base. And so basically, for the women like in Aboud, to get together and to really care about preserving not not just a specific thing, but anything that relates to who we are,
mm,
coming from women, it's a major impact
mm,
because they have the more knowledge. Let's not forget through history, men will probably go out and work. The women will do a lot of the teaching and preserving and stuff. So why not preserve it in a way that it is clear in its ministry? So that's why they came up with this
mm,
ministry, Saint Barbara's Women Ministry,
mm,
which basically they care a lot about preserving the traditional kind of food, the traditional kind of music, the dresses, all that kind of stuff, which we see all around the media that it's always somehow related and done and made through history by women.
mm,
So that's why they have the more knowledge of doing it. So that's why they wanted to take this initiative in preserving it.
mm. That's so beautiful. I love how honest you are. Like, uh, women hold more of the knowledge when it comes to our history and heritage. So why not let them lead this work, and celebrate and sustain that? That's really beautiful. I have a lot of communities I'm a part of that I think could learn a thing or two from from that kind of model. Yeah. Okay, so let's hear from your next interview with Raida.
تأثير يكون في شراكة بيننا وبينهم، يزورونا ونزورهم، يعني أشياء حلوة عنا، ومنحب إنهم يجوا يشوفوا يعرفوا إنه في مسيحية، في تواجد للمسيحية في البلاد، في أماكن سياحية، وعلى أساس يصير هم يعرفوا إيش في عنا وإحنا نتبادل آراء.
So Ruwaida, who is also part of the same ministry, I liked what she said when her focus on what she's saying is the fact having a guest house, it will give an opportunity for an exchange knowledge, not for only just us to share, but it's an
Mm,
exchange knowledge. She's talking about how basically the fact with the guest house like internationals will come and visit them, they will learn from us, but we're also open to expect to learn from them, from people who come. And so this knowledge will be spread around the world, but also we'll gain knowledge from the people
mm,
who are coming here to meet with us. So that's what she says.
hmm. Have you experienced that kind of model of exchange a lot in tours that you've led?
Yeah, for sure. For me, a lot.
Mm,
Specifically, the biggest knowledge that I've gained a lot, with so much respect, and I love it a lot, is how much when I have a lot of guests come from places where when I talk to them, and because I'm talking about history and talking about, as indigenous people and our culture, how they start sharing how their culture and their indigenous people, and there's so much similarity.
mm,
And that gives me so much joy and hope to see the fact that it just strengthened my faith that yes, the similarity in the
mm,
identity of indigenous is so much similar that it just even proves more the fact that I am indigenous to the rest of the world.
mm,
And so yeah, this was the biggest impact.
mm. That it's really moving to hear you say that. That like, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that from your own experience. That indigeneity is intimate relationship to land, stewarded through generations, but that there's something about it, it seems, that can transcend the particularity of place. And right, like there's this bond that connects you, and then in some ways, then like strengthens what your relationship to your home and your people are. Yeah, that's that's really moving. And that whole idea of exchange, I feel like, is one that came up in the episode with Sarah and in my conversation with Jer, where they're really talking about like what happens when the visitor is sort of transformed beyond this like one directional experience, and what can happen when there's an intention to cultivate some kind of relationship, or at least acknowledge that it's like, right, it's not just me that's going to be changed by going on this really spiritual or religious trip where I'm going to, connect with the land where my faith came from, but thinking about the real people and communities that I'm going to learn from, and think about what I'm also leaving, or what might be transformed in the exchange between both of us. And I think like that's something that's unique to like this kind of guest house, that we're learning about in Aboud, that I know like these kinds of guest houses exist elsewhere, kind of in the Bethlehem area, elsewhere in Palestine, which really resists the standard model of Holy Land tourism, right? Where like an itinerary is made for a group. They're going to be put in a room in a big hotel, right? That's just going to be the easiest for them to get on and off the bus. Or they're going to get put in the cheapest place, right? The cheapest hotel, so that the trip is, really affordable, or so that they can, kind of go to the most places possible. And so oftentimes like folks will end up getting put in a big hotel in Jerusalem where mostly, tourists from all over, and then they'll go out, like will stay there many days, but then their buses will shuttle them to the Dead Sea and to a really, really quick trip to Bethlehem, and they'll go all over, but maybe stay just in Jerusalem. And like that kind of model, it keeps people from being able to actually encounter the people that live there, right? Like it's just like one of consumption, one of like fast tourism, and consumerism, where there's not a connection to the local community. Whereas like a place like this kind of guest house in Aboud, it's not just a place to stay, right? Like there's exchange all throughout the process. And so this is something I feel like we couldn't underscore this enough for listeners, which I know like a lot of the speakers mentioned throughout, but like where you stay and who you spend time with is so important, because that will impact like what you get to know about the place, because there's a way to stay in a place and not really learn anything about it or the people that live there, which is a tragedy, but that's what happens, right? On so many kinds of religious pilgrimages. We focus on the ancient stones, the biblical sites, but the people that live there and the stories that they've stewarded for generations, the relationship to land that they've stewarded for generations, that can be completely lost on us. So that, I think that's another thing that's striking to me about these two conversations.
And honestly, to add to what you're saying, I think the biggest loss is the fact, because these fast tours, as you just mentioned, I've seen these fast tours. I worked in these fast tours. I've seen them they're happy. They gain some experience, but trust me, and I'm 100% sure and certain about what I'm saying. The fact they do these fast tours and they gain just that experience, which they think they gain a good experience, in reality, because they missed of all of what now we're trying to introduce, they're gaining a tiny bits of pieces of what the reality of the real experience is. Because the real experience is, as you said, it's not just the stones and the biblical sites and that's it, but the culture, the history, let alone the fact of our hospitality. I mean, that's why we want to do it, because so basically the fact that because we want to do the hospitality, we want to share, and we feel bad the fact we're not able to practice our hospitality. And so they're not benefiting, we're not benefiting. So, these fast tours, people are not really getting the actual experience. They're getting a glimpse of the experience. They could get much more if they interact with people. They get much more if they really meet the local people, whether they're Christians or not Christians, as pilgrimage or not. The fact that they're not learning from our hospitality, and as well, we're not getting any knowledge from them and their culture and their hospitality. And the only thing that we know about the West is probably from movies or some media resources, which probably present the worst and only certain type of media. But the exchange, we all grow, let alone the fact that we call ourselves brothers and sisters in Christ. It is a brother and sister. There is a family. How can you come here and not open yourself in the context of meet your family? And so that's why, I mean, okay, I understand probably people do not know that they're Christians. I don't know if they know or don't know. But I'm assuming a lot of them probably know to some extent. But be open to understand the fact even when you come to a hotel and you meet the guy who's probably taking your bags up, and if he's a brother and sister, that's an opportunity to engage as a family with someone else. So yeah, they're missing a lot of that experience.
I feel like we could have just you could have just said that and that could have been the whole episode and it's like all we needed to know. Like I feel like that's the perfect analogy. I mean, it's not even an analogy, it's just reality, but just I guess the analogy is thinking about visiting a place where your family lives and not choosing to stay with them, let alone like not choosing to see them. Be like, "Oh, I'll just like decide by myself where to visit in the town that you live, and then I'll like know this place." Right? So like if we think about that in relation to our own family, that sounds ridiculous. We would never do that. And so if we think about the relationship, you know, in the Christian faith that those of us who are Christians have with Palestinian Christians in the Holy Land, yeah, that really shifts the perspective. And even thinking about folks who are of a different religion, thinking about like a greater link that binds us, right? Of humanity, of this interest in caring for and loving all, which means like I think we have something to learn from everyone, right? And so like if that person is Muslim or Jewish or atheist, we should still ask them, their name and ask them about their experience living in that place. Because I think that, yeah, to assume that we know what we need to know is pretty ridiculous.
As much as if I get the opportunity to go to France and I want to try a croissant from France because
Yeah.
this is part of their culture, or I want to try a pizza from Italy because it's part of their culture, and engage with the people how to do it and what they do and how to eat it, and it's the same thing. I'm really wanting people to do the same thing when they come
Mm,
here, not just to go to the sites, but
yeah.
engage in my culture, with me, with the meals, with my food and tradition and culture
Mm,
and all of it.
yeah. Yeah. I can imagine the frustration then that you might experience pretty often as a tour guide when you encounter these kinds of fast tours and see the opposite.
And that's why when Ruwaida says in her interview is them people internationals coming to their guest house, the opportunity she sees is to exchange knowledge. We want to share
Mm,
with you, but we're also open to listen to you and just have an exchange knowledge that we both learn from each other.
yeah. Yeah. That's so important. Okay. So lastly, let's hear from your interview with Daoud.
المطلوب من الكنيسة الغربية إنها تيجي تزور الشعب اللي عايشين بالأراضي المقدسة، لأنه بدون هذا الشعب اللي عايشين بالأراضي المقدسة والكنيسة الأم اللي هي بداية المسيحية بالعالم، فالمطلوب إنهم يجوا يتعرفوا عليهم أكثر.
So Daoud is actually a bus driver or a tour bus driver in Bethlehem. I really loved what he said, because what he said is he is really emphasizing on the fact that people, when they come, they have to come and meet with their brothers and sisters. As he said it, meet and interact with the mother church. We exist in this land. We are in this land. We have been here for 2,000 years, and engage with us. We want to.
I love that language. Like, this is the mother church. But yet a lot of Western Christians, especially American Christians, would not acknowledge that as the truth, right? Or just don't know that to be the reality.
Yes.
I mean, we've heard this from like many other folks throughout this series and even other series on the podcast of Western Christians meeting a Palestinian Christian and asking them the question of, when did you convert, right? This very, very harmful assumption that Christianity came to Palestine later, and actually that there's not an indigenous Palestinian Christianity. I wonder if either in this interview with Daoud or in your experience, like, how have you seen people interact with the mother church? Like, have you seen people be shocked by it or learn something new, right? Like, learn this new reality or be changed by it? Like, I don't know. What does that mean? What does it mean to interact with the mother church?
Surprisingly, I have seen enough and encountered with a lot that they gave the impression that they know and don't know. Like, it's obvious that there is a church. I mean, the church started here, so we never thought about the fact that the church actually continue here. So, we're telling them that yes, why not? Why should the church not continue to exist in this land? So it's kind of like I interacted with a lot of people, especially the Christians, that it's kind of like in their back head. It's there, but they don't think about it. Even
Yeah.
if they're coming here, they don't think about it until you bring it up, and they're like, "Oh, and I should think about it, and I should consider it when I'm here." And so, yeah, that's the most that I've when I encountered a lot of people. I noticed.
Saleem, I'm really grateful for you joining me for this conversation. And I think I'm delighted that our listeners will get to hear from you, because you're always working magic behind the scenes, but we don't get to hear your voice as much. But I want to ask you a question as we close that's related to, this conversation we've had about tourism and that we've had throughout the whole series. But based on your work and your experiences, what do you think is most needed from the global Christian community in Palestine right now?
I would say the most needed thing is, as many people have said it in previous episodes, whether in this series or other series as well that we've been doing, is come and meet people, come and see, come and engage with the locals. Um, and let me honestly be saying this. Within the last 2 years, tourism has dropped a lot. Like, honestly, as a tour guide, I haven't done as much tourism in the last 2 years. And it's a very limited amount of touring that I did, but this limited amount opened my eyes to something new, that basically interacting with a lot of people who come now in the midst of the genocide, that's sometimes the internationals always say how bad they are, even, and how they're feeling pain and bad and privilege, how they're, because of their being privileged and stuff like that. And I always tell them, don't, because at this moment, now more than ever, it even means more for us for you to come. Don't look at it in the negative way, that the fact that you come here and you see what's going on, that you feel bad that you're privileged, or you feel bad that you're living in a place there is peace or something like this. No, don't look at it in a negative way. Look at it in the positive day. We want you to come, not for you to feel bad. It's because we want you to feel good with us. Give us hope. Give us strength. Give us your voice as much as we want to give you your voice. We want to share with what's going on. So you take our voice, since we're under siege, and spread it all around the world. And so don't think of feeling bad trying to come here. Come. It's actually crucial, and it's very important to try to come even either now or right when the moment when there's an opportunity for anyone to come. Economically, I mean, people are in desperate need, but also in a knowledge sense and in interacting, it's important because we want you to come. We want you to not acknowledge of the reality of what's going on and what's happening, and to engage with us and build relationships and know us. Um, and I'll end with this. This morning when I was in church, since it's Pentecostal day, our pastor was reading the paragraph from the promise that Jesus was giving his disciples when he told them that he's basically going to send the Holy Spirit. And for some reason, I noticed that the descriptions that Jesus gave the Holy Spirit were only two descriptions to his disciples: the Comforter and the Spirit of Truth. And I think if we think about it, Pentecostal Day happened. So the Spirit of God is within us. And if you think about it, we are in desperate need for, not me, but everyone is in desperate need for that comfort. That is, the Spirit of God is already in us. So basically, coming, engaging, that is part of the comfort. That is God today as a celebration to remember, and as well the Spirit of truth. The fact when they come here, when people come here, they'll see the truth. This is what we always want them to do. We don't want people to come here to be pro one side and pro against the other side. We want them to see the truth. And since the Spirit of truth, as Jesus promised that he has given us, so as comfort and as the Spirit of truth, which is already within us, it's something to think about when people really come and see, when they think about touring, when they come and engage with local Palestinian Christians or Palestinians at all, and building relationships and engaging with people. So,
Okay, didn't know you were going to preach here. That's amazing.
well,
Yeah, no, I think that is such an important word of truth coming from you. So thank you. And I think in light of that encouragement that you just shared for people to come even now, whenever they can, and the impact of that, I wonder if now we can share some news, some exciting news that we've been waiting to share until the end of this series with all of our listeners about something that we've been scheming about as a team on the podcast. And we're really excited to share that after all of these conversations about tourism and pilgrimage and visiting, learning from Palestinian Christians, we in May of 2026 are going to host an Across the Divide delegation trip to Palestine. So we can't wait. Our team is full of, we're a small team, but we have Saleem, who is an expertly trained and licensed tour guide. Yes, it's true. We will have a couple of us hosts there. We'll go around the time of Christ at the Checkpoint, the next conference in Bethlehem. It'll be the end of May 2025, and we'll expand our trip around that so that we can spend time in community, building relationships, seeing the truth, being witnesses to our siblings in Palestine and Israel. So friends, listeners, mark your calendars, start saving your pennies. We want you to be there with us on this really special delegation trip. So 2026, put it on the calendar. We'll be together in Palestine, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, great. Well, in the meantime, Saleem will be working on the itinerary, making sure that we've got all kinds of great experiences and communities that folks can be learning from. But thanks for joining me just to wrap up this series and really bring it home in some important ways.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Across the Divide. We are so grateful. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Across the Divide. We are so grateful for your support and interest. The hosts of this podcast are Daniel Bannoura, Jennifer Madrand, and myself, Abir Shhali. Saleem Anfous is our producer. Our theme music is composed by Charlie Rishmawi. To help sustain the work of this podcast, please consider becoming a financial supporter of Across the Divide. Any donation amount makes a difference, and with a donation of as little as $5 a month, you will gain access to exclusive supporter-only content. Go to patreon.com/acrossthedivide to learn more and donate. For any feedback or suggestions, connect with us on Instagram at Across the Divide Podcast. Until next time, stay curious, stay passionate, stay engaged, and join us again on Across the Divide.